This is Matthew Cratter's Bitcoin University. Today I want to answer the question, is Bitcoin completely worthless? Actually, it is. Bitcoin is a completely worthless asset. It should be trading at zero if there were any justice in this world. This may surprise some people, especially since the global consensus of free markets has been valuing Bitcoin rather far above zero lately, currently valuing it even in excess of silver's market cap, Bitcoin being valued at a $1.79 trillion market cap. This just goes to show how stupid markets can be, and markets can certainly remain stupid for rather long periods of time. In fact, the market has been valuing Bitcoin north of zero since 2009. There's this transaction that took place in late 2009 where someone traded over 5,000 Bitcoins for just above $5. So that's basically 15 long, terrible years of Bitcoin being valued by the market at a value greater than zero, basically Bitcoin's entire life. Fortunately, though, we still have brave financial journalists who are willing to step into the ring and give Bitcoin the Will Smith-like slap that it so richly deserves. Enter James Baxter-Derrington. I feel like I should say Baxter-Derrington III. That would be much cooler. But he has this article over at the Telegraph. Whine all you want, Bitcoin is still worthless. Widespread adoption of this quote-unquote crypto asset would be its very downfall. And this article begins, everything worthless eventually collapses. A Ponzi scheme will inevitably crumble. Snake oil won't cure what ails you. A plantation in Poitiers will prove impossible to find. Hell, even things with value are liable to burn. Just ask IBM, Kodak, and Xerox. I think this is a really good point that he makes, that once valuable things can indeed implode. The Telegraph itself, where he works, is a great example. Its circulation is down about 28% since 1980, even though the population of the UK is up something like 25% since then. And the Telegraph looks like it's headed in the same direction as Kodak and Xerox. As he points out, the Telegraph up for sale after takeover collapses. So this doesn't look like a very healthy business. James then goes on to compare Bitcoin in this article to a Ponzi scheme. Quote, the ability to make money from something doesn't define its value. Bernie Madoff's $65 billion scheme was worth plenty to him for decades, and a pretty penny could be earned so long as you got out before it blew up. So this raises the question, is Bitcoin a Ponzi scheme like Madoff's scheme? And no, it's not, because Bitcoin is decentralized. Unlike Madoff's Ponzi, Bitcoin is not run by a scammer who keeps track of everyone's holdings on a private ledger and then uses present-day people coming into the investment to pay off past investors. So it doesn't work that way. By contrast, it's a very public ledger. Copies of the Bitcoin ledger are completely public and open for anyone to view, and are found all over the world in the form of Bitcoin nodes. We can see they're found on every continent on Earth now. If you're enjoying this video so far, I just ask you to help to support the channel. Hit the subscribe button. That does really help. Leave a like, leave a comment, question, suggestion for a future video. Share this video with a friend or family member. So then James goes on to talk about the metaphor of Bitcoin as digital gold. What about digital gold, the ever-loved phrase of financial commentators who feel strong-armed by its seeming permanence to speak about it sagely, blah, blah, blah. Society's use of gold dates back about as far as alcohol and is just shy of agriculture. We accepted its value before we began to construct currency. It's been around longer than any civilization that you could name. Sure, in the long lens of the universe, it will vanish, blah, blah, blah. It also has value beyond currency. Open up any electronic product and you'll see a glint. This is a common misunderstanding, not understanding what a monetary premium is and how it is very different from some sort of utility premium or industrial value that the market attaches to things. So for example, silver is its pricing is mostly a function of industrial demand with just a sliver of a monetary premium. Gold is the inverse of silver, where it's just a small amount of electronic demand and industrial demand, about 10%, and then 90% is a monetary premium. Bitcoin is 100% monetary premium, and I do go into that a bit more in this video, which I'll link to in the description notes below. So it's surprising that James isn't aware of very basic economic and financial concepts and monetary concepts like monetary premiums. He goes on in the article to say, quote, even if we disregard the volatility which renders Bitcoin useless as money, there is no infrastructure nor the incentive to build one that could even scratch the surface of our daily spending needs. Now, saying that Bitcoin is worthless as money certainly speaks against my experience. I use it as money every single day of my life. There are many places in the world you can go where it's highly used as money. For example, Bitcoin Beach in El Salvador, Bitcoin Jungle in Costa Rica, Bitcoin Island in the Philippines, and you can also check out the BTC map. You can find places to spend Bitcoin anywhere in the world, and people all over the world also use it as a savings technology. So when he says it's useless, this really speaks against the experience of many people who are using it on a daily basis. He also says there's no infrastructure and there's no incentive to build one. Well, this disregards what I just showed you. The Bitcoin network itself, this is global infrastructure that is extremely, extremely robust, and it's not run by any centralized group, so it will be very robust in a time of famine or pandemic or war. And then we have as well second layers like the Lightning Network, for example, which currently has over 17,000 nodes and over 46,000 channels. So this infrastructure is indeed being built out, and there is an incentive to build it out, as we've seen over the past few years, as people working on different layer 2s, people working on the base layer as well to make it more robust. So that wasn't true. Here's another quote from his article. Bitcoin's average monthly turnover is around 22 billion, about the size of a black hole, large depending on your perspective. U.S. equities trading volumes average roughly 4.6 trillion per month over the year to July. He gets his facts wrong here. I don't know what he means by average monthly turnover. If he's talking about trading volume, Bitcoin does something like 30, 40, 45 billion dollars worth of trading volume every 24 hours, at least as measured by CoinMarketCap. This seems about right. If he's talking about settlement value, though, it's even larger. In the last few years, Bitcoin has settled in the single to double-digit trillions, settling over $48 trillion worth of value in 2021, $39 trillion in 2022, and on pace to settle something like $17, $18 trillion in 2024. So these are much, much larger numbers, and he quotes here 22 billion. So I think he got his facts wrong. And he's also ignoring the sort of transaction volume and value move that happens on the Lightning Network. So it really depends. Are you talking about trading volume? Are you talking about on-chain settlement value? Or are you talking about something else on a second layer? And again, he doesn't go into this nuance because I think he's not aware of it at all. James goes on a little further down in the article. According to Steve Kiketi, former head of the Monetary and Economic Department at the Bank for International Settlements, well, that's a good guy to quote, the guy who runs the central bank for central banks and is at the center of the fiat financial system that hates Bitcoin. But let's quote him anyway. According to Steve and according to Kim Schoenholtz, and Kim is especially a very special person because I assume it's a she. She's a former chief economist at numerous institutions. So I don't know if that just means she's climbing the ladder or she's been fired a lot. And current professor emeritus at NYU Stern School of Business. So according to these people, Visa, and according to Google as well, you could just Google this, but I think he has to cite the authorities, cite the experts. Visa is capable of processing 65,000 transactions per second. Bitcoin's blockchain limits it to fewer than 10 per second. It's more like 7 per second. Now, there's a name for this where you're citing someone's credentials. This is called credentialism. This is obviously very important to James. But in terms of this actual quote and in terms of the comparison between Visa and Bitcoin, the thing is Visa is a layer 4 or layer 3, something like that. And it's not a final settlement network. You can reverse transactions up to something like 90 days, and banks themselves settle and sort of net out the transactions that happen on Visa. So for example, if one bank does more volume and then another bank does less volume, they will move money using either FedWire or using ACH to settle things. So Visa is not a final settlement network like Bitcoin is. The final settlement network that Visa relies on is the U.S. banking rails, which are secured by proof of war and warships. And so you can't really compare transactions per second for something that's a base layer and something that's a higher layer. FedWire, for example, which settles the bulk of US dollar transactions at the base layer, globally has about 7 or 8 TPS transactions per second. So it's on the same order of magnitude as Bitcoin. So this is a completely ridiculous comparison, but you can tell that James is very concerned about credentialism and quoting the experts, and he doesn't even understand the difference between a base layer and a higher layer. So that's sort of fiat credentialism at work. I will put a link in the description notes below to this video about Bitcoin and Visa and the comparisons if you want to dig down a little deeper. So that was one James. That was James Derrington, blah, blah, blah. There seems to be another James who has a problem in the UK, James Ball. In the 13 years I've written about Bitcoin, its prices range from less than 1 penny to over 72,400 pounds. What hasn't changed is this. It was useless then, and it's useless now. Bitcoin sucks for everything, and a high price doesn't change that. I was unable to look inside of this article because it's behind a paywall, but it looks like he is associating Bitcoin with Donald Trump, and he looks like someone who doesn't like Donald Trump. He doesn't like alpha males because he's not one. So why are these James and James, why are James squared calling Bitcoin worthless and useless? Is it intellectual laziness? Is it dull-wittedness? To use a nice British term, is there a pandemic of stupidity affecting British journalists named James? If so, can Pfizer help? Or are James and James just suffering from good old-fashioned envy and resentment? I think that's probably the most likely explanation. A more honest journalistic approach would have involved steel manning the case for Bitcoin. So the free market's currently valuing Bitcoin, as we said, at about $1.7 trillion, while James and James are valuing it at zero. So that's a rather wide delta. Perhaps they're missing something. A lot of people in the world actually seem to really like Bitcoin. People seem to like that you can store Bitcoin yourself without needing a bank account or a brokerage account. You can even store it inside your head by memorizing 12 English words. Even though James and James say that Bitcoin is worthless and useless, people seem to like that Bitcoin can't be frozen or turned off by anyone, unlike UK bank accounts, which seem to be particularly vulnerable to being closed if someone doesn't like your views. We saw what happened to Nigel Farage and many other people in the UK. People also seem to like that they can send Bitcoin to anyone, anywhere in the world, 24/7, without needing to ask permission from an economist, a journalist from the Telegraph, or a banker from a central bank or other bank. People in countries with collapsing currencies seem to like that Bitcoin can help to protect their families. Even as Lebanon's currency lost over 90% of its value, Bitcoin held its purchasing power globally. Bitcoin isn't tied to any government or central bank, so it can't be manipulated the way the Lebanese pound was. So in a country where the banking system became a trap, Bitcoin provided a way out. So if we look around, we look at the market cap of Bitcoin, we look all around the world, it seems that lots of people all around the world seem to find Bitcoin quite useful, including myself. If James and James don't find Bitcoin particularly useful, that's fine, but it's not especially kind or intelligent to go around telling other people, especially people in developing countries who are encountering currency problems, it's not especially kind or intelligent to go around telling other people that something that they value is completely worthless or useless. It's rather uncouth, in fact. The very sad truth is this: it's not Bitcoin that's completely worthless. It's you, James. It's you, other James. And it's also all the legacy media companies that have been lying to us about every single topic under the sun, including Bitcoin, for the past decade, and trying to keep people away from Bitcoin and hurting their very readers and subscribers by doing that. One of the most wonderful things, though, about Bitcoin is that it is a voluntary opt-in system, unlike the British pound system, which you are forced at gunpoint to use, or you will go to jail if you don't pay your taxes using it. Bitcoin, by contrast, is a voluntary opt-in system, and I, for one, am not especially heartbroken that James and James have self-selected themselves off of this particular life raft. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video, and let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.